This video is about the economic theory of distributivism, or distributism. People who call themselves distributivists believe that property ownership should be widespread. In other words, the middle class should be large. And specifically that people as individuals, or small groups, but mostly as individuals, should have access to the means of production. In other words, people should own tools and land. That is distributivism in a nutshell. This idea is interesting because it frames a goal without talking very much about how to get there. If you're a free market guy, you think that the state should stay out, free market competitors should rise to the top. If one of them ends up being bigger than all the others, whatever. The main thing is that the how is respected, and the how is through freedom and through commerce and through exchange and through competition. That is how we should organize our society. We're very focused on how. If you're a communist, by contrast, you think that, nasty corporations, nasty self-interest, what we want is the state to regulate stuff. We want state to own the means of production. We want to get rid of this private property thing, and then we can distribute things the way they should be. And that is roughly the idea. We care very much about a goal of a stateless society eventually somehow by means of the state. But the way we're going to get there is by controlling the means of production and taking that, because everyone has a right to bread. And so that's the idea. Both are arguing about how. Distributivism says, let's talk briefly about the goal. The ideas of distributivism come out mostly from Catholic social teaching from the 19th and 20th centuries. The main figures that you're going to find that talk a lot about this are G.K. Chesterton, who is a Christian apologist and children's book writer, prolific author. While I was visiting the UK, I had a chance to visit his gravesite. He wrote a number of books that I really like. One of them is called The Man Who Was Thursday, which is a metaphysical crime thriller. That's a genre for you. He wrote lots and lots and lots of stuff. And some of these books, including one called Tales of the Longbow, start to play with this idea of distributivism, that we want a strong, you want to use the English term for this, like England English, a strong yeoman class. In France, you might call them the paysan class. Peasant means something very different in English than it does in France. It's more like a yeoman, a small landholder. We want more of this. More individuals owning things, more individuals having control of their own destiny, more people being able to make a living with tools that they own themselves. G.K. Chesterton also had a friend, another French-English author named Hilaire Belloc, who wrote a notable book called The Servile State. There's a slogan that G.K. Chesterton promoted, which I believe is 3 acres and a cow. That's what he wanted for people, was the ability to provide some of their own land for grazing food, and a cow providing the milk and cheese, and that you had access to this directly, not intermediated through corporations or the state. I mean, if you want to live in the city, fine, but we want a strong, very large yeoman class with this kind of ideal arrangement. The American equivalent of that might have been 40 acres and a mule. Because distributivism is focused mostly on an end goal of having a strong yeoman class and yeowomen class, of individuals who own the means of production and the ways to make a livelihood. Another major thread in this idea of distributivism is a strong distrust of large institutions. So, big corporations, can they exert tyranny? Do we like monopolies? If you're a distributivist, the answer is no. Big government that can exercise tyranny and direct lots of the details of your life. If you're a distributivist, do you like this? The answer is no. They want locality. And this comes largely from a Catholic idea called the principle of subsidiarity, which is that there is an ethical responsibility within any organization that if a small unit can handle a problem, they ought to handle it without passing it further up the chain. In other words, let's say that your little community can solve this problem, but it's kind of inefficient and kind of ugly, but it would be so much easier if this unit, just a bit bigger, rather than the parish solving the problem, you went up to the diocese. If you went up to this higher unit, you could solve it easier, but there is an ethical responsibility to shove fixing that to the lowest unit that can reasonably handle the problem. There are some problems that you have to handle at taller units, maybe things like national defense, roads, those should go up a few levels. But let's say charity for the poor, let's get that to the lowest level that we can possibly get. Let's handle that within the parish if we can, and if we can't, we handle the problem at one level higher, and if we can't at that level, we go one level higher. We want to keep responsibility as pushed down close to the level of the individual as you can, recognizing that that is an ideal which will not always be lived up to. Maybe there's an accident and you can't provide your own bread. Okay? Let's solve that problem at the smallest unit that can, rather than pushing it up the chain. Because it doesn't focus so much on the means to achieve that goal, there's a great deal of flexibility in what kind of person can call themselves a distributivist. You could be a solid free market guy and say that monopolies are an aberration that's only ever caused by state involvement, and what we need is a strong middle class. You could do that. You could also say that, as many early distributivists did, that what we need is strong taxes that tax land to prevent speculation in land so that we can have a little bit more of a spreading out. Go full Grocki Brothers and have land reform. Both of those could call themselves distributivists because the key idea is a strong yeoman class. I find this idea personally extremely interesting because I have some natural leanings toward that kind of independence. I want a homestead someday. I want very much to be able to grow my own food and have solar panels on my roof and have a little bit more independence from the hecticness of life. I hope you found this interesting, this idea of distributivism. It's an interesting economic outlook and way to look at the world, and a really neat set of goals. There is something very American about it in a Jeffersonian Republican sort of way. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and subscribe below. We look forward to seeing you next time.